Hello, fairy tale things, and welcome back to my swamp. It is hard to believe that it's already been a full year since the trailer dropped for the most anticipated movie of our generation, the return of an all-star ogre, Shrek 5. And boy, did the internet have quite the first impression of this trailer. So a year later, I thought we'd look back on the trailer, the internet's opinion of the trailer, and recent developments with Shrek 5. Because boy, does this movie feel like it's taking a long time. A very long time. Now, about a year ago, this trailer didn't exactly come out of nowhere. For those of us in the know, in the Shrek swamp, we had been expecting something to happen. It had been a little over half a year since the initial announcement of Shrek 5, officially, with this TikTok they put up. It wasn't even a real trailer, it was just a little TikTok that played the All-Star Smash Mouth song and had the logo and gave us the film's original release date of summer 2026, which of course wouldn't happen. But then we actually had a Shrek special that aired primetime with the Masked Singer. Does anyone remember this? This was a Shrek Masked Singer special, and a lot of us thought there was going to be a Shrek 5 announcement attached to this special. It was Shrek themed, a lot of regular normies would be watching it, it felt like Shrek was back, and curiously, I had noticed in the trailer to this that the audience was all wearing Shrek 5 t-shirts. Actually, you might notice that I'm wearing a Shrek 5 t-shirt, and this is a screen-used Masked Singer Shrek shirt. This was used in the filming of the episode. But despite the presence of the mini Shrek 5 t-shirts, Shrek 5 was never mentioned once in the entire episode, which I thought was really strange. At the time, I had speculated that maybe an announcement was planned, but was cut due to some sort of delay. And there might have been some truth to that, because literally 6 to 7 days later, it was only a week, we got the Shrek 5 trailer. Now, when the trailer dropped, I was actually at work. I had a 9-hour shift that day, and my job doesn't have a consistent Wi-Fi connection. It's got a little bit of internet. I can get text messages and calls, but anything as far as photos and websites will not load. So my phone had blown up with notifications the whole day, and I was really confused as to what was happening. I had an ominous text message from my mom who said, "Austin, it happened." And I'm thinking, oh God, there's either been a death in the family or the Shrek 5 trailer dropped. And thank God it was the Shrek 5 trailer. So after finishing my 9-hour shift, I hurried home and decided to watch the trailer. And because I hadn't been on the internet the entire day, I thought it would be really fascinating to film my reaction to the trailer, like with YouTube in the early 2010s with a reaction video, and then also do a follow-up video about the internet's reaction. Well, initially it was just going to be that reaction, but I didn't know what the internet thought of this trailer, okay? So my unbiased reaction is great. I thought the trailer was decent. I thought it was pretty good. You know, it's a teaser trailer. It was never going to be heavy on plot elements. We were never going to see anything major like the return of Farquaad or maybe Puss in Boots. No, it was just, here's Shrek and Donkey, and then here's the reveal of Zendaya as Shrek's daughter, Felicia, which I thought was a really fantastic and ingenious design with the onion bun on her hair. I remember thinking that was just great. And we see Fiona looking beautiful as always, and they're looking at some Shrek memes. And these are real memes from real life, so there's a little bit of a meta element there, something from the real world. They're scrolling through the magic meal like he's a TikTok, like a smartphone. Makes sense. Shrek has been moved up and is now aging with the times, and Shrek wants to know who's making these memes. Pinocchio appears and says, "Not me!" And then his nose extends, so he must have played some part in making these memes. But my personal speculation, I don't think he made those memes. I think he brought them into Shrek's world, because if you look at these memes, they're clearly real memes. And they deliberately made the memes, they recreated them, to have Shrek's older design and not his modern design, which I think I mentioned that as an interesting takeaway. So the film was going to have some sort of meta element, maybe acknowledging the real world. And there had been a lot of whispers going around that there would be an element of the real world in the movie. I think as far back as like 2018-19, someone, I don't know who it was, so I won't give a name, but somebody at DreamWorks said in an interview like it was going to be different. It was going to be a reinvention of Shrek, really not what you're expecting. So a lot of us knew that this wasn't going to be a traditional Shrek sequel. Like, it's not just going to pick up after Shrek 4 and continue on. It was going to be a reinvention of the wheel, you know, so to speak. So I thought it looked fine. And then I went on the internet, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. It feels like you couldn't escape the trashing of this movie trailer. And I gotta be clear here. I am not a simp, okay? I am not here to just tell you that everything Shrek is the greatest thing ever. Obviously, I'm gonna have a bias toward Shrek because I love the franchise. But as someone that loves the Shrek franchise, I understand when Shrek is bad. I'll even tell you that I think some of the bad elements of Shrek are the most interesting to talk about. Hence why I do tend to talk about Shrek the Third a lot. Even though Shrek the Third is not a good movie, it's very interesting to talk about. And with this trailer, I don't think it's bad. I just don't see it. I think the designs look pretty good. Dare I say, they even look great. I think people get caught up in the hysteria, and I think there's several factors playing at the internet's reaction to this trailer. You know, looking on the outside, looking in, because, you know, I didn't get caught up in that ball. I was separate, you know, I was separate for 9.5 hours, and looking in at the Hate for the Shrek 5 trailer, here's my conclusion I have come to. We, Generation Z, and most of my audience, if you're between like 22 and 30, you grew up with Shrek, and we are now seeing our childhoods, the 2000s, used by big Hollywood. These franchises are coming back. Generation X had this moment a lot earlier because the 80s were mine from the get-go, right? You had like The Wedding Singer in the 90s, and then it just continued on and on. Remember Tron? Tron is back. Remember Star Wars? Remember Ghostbusters? Remember everything? Everything from Generation X came back, and there was a lot of money to be made there with legacy sequels and products and toys. They made a cash cow out of it. And then we saw a little bit of it with the 90s and the return of Jurassic Park and 90s franchises. And now it is our turn. Our childhoods are coming back because there's money to be made. And I don't blame these companies for doing this. I think they should. I think if the franchise is there and people want products and things from it, so be it, you know? If people still log onto their Neopets account and want to buy Neopets stuff, more power to you. I think that's great. I even bought some Neopets tarot cards because I thought they were neat and it reminded me of my youth. And there's a lot of power and money in nostalgia. Shrek was gonna come back. A lot of people don't like the idea of Shrek coming back, like, oh, here's another thing from my childhood, back to make money. Look, it's a billion-dollar franchise. It was gonna come back. I think they were even more motivated by the success of the Puss in Boots movies, which I think blew DreamWorks' expectations out of the water. Both the 2011 movie to some extent, but really Last Wish. And Last Wish got a lot of industry chatter and buzz. It became, you know, Hollywood royalty for a while. It was considered the best piece of animation we had in years. So imagine you're in Hollywood, you go into these Hollywood parties and get-togethers, and everyone's talking about Puss in Boots and how this movie pushes animation forward. It's the best film we've seen in years come out of Hollywood. And they're saying, well, what if we bring back Shrek? Do you want to be a part of that? Everyone wants to be a part of that. And Shrek is back with products, with the movie, everything. So Shrek was always going to come back. That leads me to the second part of my analysis, the designs. Why were people so opposed to these designs? Well, simply put, they're different. These aren't the Shrek designs we're used to seeing. They're for a new audience, and that is unfamiliar to us. And instantly, people's first reaction is, well, it's not what I know. I don't like it. But I'm here to bring some reality to the conversation, and that's that the Shrek movies were products of their time. What I mean by that is the way those movies were assembled, the technology, the people behind them, they're not around anymore. Actually, quite a few people associated with Shrek have died. Rest in peace is Kelly Asbury, man. He was a genius and one of the GOATs. God bless him. But a lot of the people that put together Shrek are no longer around, and DreamWorks is no longer around. Believe it or not, DreamWorks as an animation studio no longer exists. The studio that animated Shrek 1 through 4 was a subdivision of DreamWorks called Pacific Data Imagery. They were a separate studio based up in San Francisco, up north, and they were separate from the Glendale DreamWorks animation studio. So in Glendale, they would write the movies, design the characters, and they still do all that, but they would send it up north to Pacific Data Imagery, who would animate it, and they were shut down. I think their last movies were Mr. Peabody and Sherman and Penguins of Madagascar. And after that, they began contracting their movies out. And now they fully do contract stuff. Like, I think DreamWorks, they had a China studio for a little while that animated some stuff. That's gone too now. Like, DreamWorks is really just a art department that makes the characters, the story, the script, and then they'll send stuff to Sony, believe it or not. Would be seen as rival animation studios back in the day, like Sony, end up animating DreamWorks' recent films, like The Bad Guys, Kung Fu Panda 4. Those were not made at DreamWorks. Those old servers, like here's a photo of the Shrek server room that housed all the assets and the whole movies in there. That's gone. That no longer exists. I'm sure somebody saved the assets of the Shrek movies. I mean, I sure hope so. If those are lost to time, oh my god, my ogre heart would be broken. But to reassemble that and construct a movie deliberately made to look like the first Shrek movie, it's not going to happen. It would just be too expensive. The reality is, movies are animated differently now. They're animated on open source software, on state-of-the-art computers and technology. And if you look at the old Shrek movies, those were animated in the Stone Age. They were animated on these heavy workstations that had much more in common with a Nintendo 64 than a modern computer. That's true. Silicon Graphics, they controlled all that stuff. But you're just not going to get a movie that looks like this. It just isn't going to happen. I know someone out there can still animate this. Somebody on the internet probably will, when Shrek 5 comes out, reanimate the movie to look like the classic films. Because people on the internet are very talented. But I'm just looking through the lens of modern Hollywood and how these movies are constructed. And you've got modern studios, modern technology. Shrek 5 is being produced by Chris Melandri, the Illumination guy, the Despicable Me creator. So I think visually it was always going to have a lot more in common with Despicable Me and Illumination, because that's the technology that they're using and that's the people that they have on hand. And honestly, all those things considered, I think they did good. If you look at the detail in the characters, if you look at the very warm lighting that tends to skew a little more yellow, that's distinctly Shrek. Those are Shrek qualities, and I think they did a really nice job of bringing the Shrek designs into the modern animation lens and not selling out the franchise. These don't look like a Grubhub or a Kroger commercial, right? That's like, the bottom of the barrel for animation. I kind of feel bad for the animators that animated those commercials, because they were just doing contract work for cheap, but now it's like, that's the lowest bar of animation. And yeah, if Shrek looked like that, it would be a different story. I'd be very critical of it. But the reality is, I don't think these designs are that bad. And I'm going to take this back 20 years or so to The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Hear me out here, but one of my favorite childhood games was The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. It was my Zelda game. I played it for hours and hours. I was really into it. Actually, one of the very first videos I did on this channel over 10 years ago was a review of Wind Waker toys. Because I was so excited they were finally making Wind Waker toys, I decided to film a review with my Nintendo 3DS. I think that video was filmed with my 3DS, and I put it up on this channel. Unfortunately, I deleted that video shortly afterwards because I was very embarrassed of it, but I still have it on a hard drive, so you're looking at that now. That's the first Austin the Brimstone video uploaded in 2015, but I was surprised to learn as an adult that that game initially received a lot of backlash on the internet because Generation X, 2 before Z, Generation X was not happy with the look of that game. They wanted the characters redesigned to look like the classic Zelda, Ocarina of Time. And what Nintendo did is they did eventually redesign the characters, but they did it for the follow-up game, Twilight Princess, which is funny because I always thought the game looked really ugly as a kid. And I was confused, like, why did they make such a pretty game and then such an ugly game? And now you know, they caved into internet pressure, and I feel like Shrek 5 is Generation Z's Wind Waker moment. Like, everyone on the internet is really overreacting to those character designs. And why did everyone go after Fiona specifically? I think she looks beautiful. She has long hair, like in Shrek 4, but in the regular timeline, Fiona has long hair, and you're doom posting about Shrek 5? So, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, if the movie's bad, I will be frank about it. If Shrek 5 comes out and it's terrible, I will be completely honest and say, look, this movie blows. This is not what I want as a Shrek fan. I know bad Shrek when I see it, okay? It does happen. And bad Shrek is pretty interesting to talk about, but I think the trailer looks good. I think the premise of interacting with memes and maybe a little bit of the real world in there, I think that's interesting. I do. I think there's a lot of commentary on the state of pop culture and franchises, and Shrek has been known to be on the cutting edge of commentary. You know, the first movie was a skewering of Disney and the Disney Renaissance of the 90s. Shrek 2 was a very good skewering of celebrity culture of the early 2000s and tabloids and Hollywood. It makes sense now that Shrek's grand return would be a skewering of modern pop culture and Hollywood. Make fun of the memes, make fun of the franchises. I think Shrek 5 should be like a commentary on legacy sequels. I think it should be aware that it's a legacy sequel. Just imagine a scene where Shrek is like on a bridge with Farkle and they do the Kylo Ren Han Solo scene, but like make a joke of it. That would be brilliant. But I'm not writing Shrek 5. Some very talented Hollywood people are. Actually, the people behind Shrek 5 are pretty good. We've got Walt Dorn. We've got Conrad Vernon. I mean, these are people that understand the Shrek franchise. Pretty much everyone involved with the story team of Shrek 1 through 4 is playing a role here. Everyone except Kelly Asbury, because he's no longer with us. But you've got Walt Dorn. You've got Conrad Vernon. Jeffrey Katzenberg. Even at his age, I mean, he is spry as ever. And from what I've heard, he plays a pretty direct hand in the development of Shrek 5. So the right people are in the right places, and I am still very hyped for the movie. Do I think they're changing the designs? I don't know. That's a good question. I really don't know. I don't think they are, because changing the designs would require redesigning all the merchandise. You know, everyone's talking about Sonic, right? They're going to pull a Sonic. They're going to do a Sonic. But the reality is that Sonic 2020 is not Shrek 5. So Sonic is now a billion-dollar franchise, but go back to 2020 and Sonic was in dire straits. That period from Sonic Forces to Sonic movie releasing, you'd think the franchise was on the way out. It was rough. So they really didn't have anything to lose when they redesigned Sonic. They did have a toy line that they actually canceled. The figures never released except one playset. This one released, but all the figures were canceled. So if they did something with Shrek 5, they would have to cancel all of the products, or most of the products, and Shrek is a different beast than that first Sonic movie. This has always been seen as a tentpole franchise. Dare I say, Shrek is the last tentpole franchise to not have the legacy sequel treatment that's a billion-dollar franchise. I may be wrong on this, let me know in the comments, but hear me out. Everything else has come back. Jurassic Park, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Tron, Top Gun. They're running out of things to bring back. Shrek is like the last one I could really think of where it has been over 15 years since a movie. Not counting Puss in Boots, like just Shrek. There hasn't been a Shrek presence in 15 years. That's pretty impressive. So there is a lot of money to be made with that franchise coming back. Like, the return of Shrek, when it finally happens, when the products start coming out and we enter the year of 2027, the year of our Lord Shrek, when the movie actually releases, I think it's going to be on par with Star Wars Episode 1. I think it's that big. You've got just all the right things lining up for that Star Wars momentum. You've got a lot of excitement among younger people, among adults, people my age. We're starting to have our first babies. People want to take their kids. People want to buy all the merchandise like me. I think Gen Z is ripe for a massive blockbuster comeback, and I think Shrek 5 is that movie. And I think they know this. I think that's part of the delay as well, is not even the movie itself, but maybe the products, the timing, stuff like that. But there's no doubt the movie's in some level of development hell, so when the movie does actually come out, I would be very curious to see what the development was like, because Shrek 5 has been like in active development, like day-to-day development since 2019. People have gone into work on this movie. So I really hope they release a big coffee table book and just tell the whole story. A lot of us want to know, like, how the Weed Wat stew is made, so to speak, right? So, yeah, what else happened? Well, it got delayed again. In August, they announced that the movie would be delayed once more, another half a year until the summer of 2027, which is just brutal. Oh my god, that would have been what? A full 3 years since the original teaser in 2024? That is crazy. Aside from the trailer, news about Shrek 5 was really few and far between. There have been some rumblings, like Limp Bizkit confirmed they are working on a track for Shrek 5, which I think is really funny and odd, and maybe hints at the direction that the movie's going. If Limp Bizkit is included in the Shrek 5 soundtrack, then it's clearly going for a 2000s Y2K influence. And there actually is some speculation online that My Chemical Romance will be featured in Shrek 5, because they're working on a top secret project that some think is Shrek. Honestly, I think that would be perfect. My Chemical Romance is like the 2000s band for Generation Z, and if Shrek 5 is going to feature a lot of Generation Z-centric nostalgia, why not feature MCR? Recently, we've seen a big love letter to 2000s emo culture in the form of Murder Drones, one of my favorite original animated series to debut. And I think if the 2000s emo style is back, it deserves a place in the Shrek franchise, because Shrek is an amalgamation of the 2000s. He is something that people really associate with the era, and I think Shrek 5 is really going to play into that nostalgia. But aside from murmurs and whisperings, the real big announcement for Shrek 5, the only other thing we had in 2025, other than the delay, was the reveal of Fergus and Farkle, Shrek's twin boys, on a parade float at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. This was a really weird way to reveal central characters, but this has to be because of the film's delays. There's no doubt in my mind that a full Shrek 5 story trailer was planned for the summer or fall of 2025, when the movie was delayed to July of 2027. And so, they were revealed via parade float. A very unusual way to reveal a plot point, but I'll admit it worked, because I was up Thanksgiving morning, more excited than I ever was about the Thanksgiving Day parade, and I filmed myself watching the float parade its way down New York. So that was fun and neat. And interestingly enough, the float also corrected Felicia's eye color. It was actually incorrect in the initial teaser trailer, which supposedly is due to the trailer itself being really early. An animator who worked on the trailer claimed that the Shrek 5 trailer that was released in early 2025 actually wasn't supposed to release until December of 2025. Now, I think this was all really preliminary, because if Fergus and Farkle were on the parade float, then there's no doubt in my mind that we were supposed to get some sort of trailer over the summer, because there's no way they were going to reveal all of the characters' updated designs on a parade float. That just wasn't the plan. So even though this came from an official animator, I'm still very suspect on the idea that they were going to wait all the way until December to release any sort of teaser. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. The timeline is all so iffy. Let's have a discussion in the comments. I think everything about the trailer and the delays is so fascinating and so interesting and odd, just like Shrek himself. He's an odd dude. A funny dude that Shrek is. Shrek 5's IMAX release date is still up in the air. The franchise keeps appearing on the IMAX releases and then disappearing because of stiff competition. I think first it was Dune, and now it's going to compete with Spider-Verse 2, which honestly really worries me. So I don't know if it's going to get an IMAX release. I think it deserves it. I would love to see it get an IMAX release, but I also think with or without the IMAX release, it'll still make a ton of money. Animated kids movies, they don't really need like the IMAX treatment to do well. But, you know, it helps. More screens always help. We also got the announcement of a Donkey movie. This was actually leaked by almost honest Shrek leaker. There's a lot of people on the internet that claim to have Shrek knowledge, but they really don't have Shrek knowledge. But there is one leaker who has had a completely flawless track record, and that is Eddie Murphy. The man, the myth, the donkey, Eddie Murphy. He opened his donkey mouth years ago and talked about Shrek 5. He said that it had a 2025 release date, which I actually believe. And then he started talking about the donkey movie. I remember DreamWorks, Universal was like, no, there's no donkey movie. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And then like a week later, they're like, yeah, there's a donkey movie. So I guess he spoke when he shouldn't have. And he's given us all details on the film, that it's going to be a film about donkey, Dragon's going to be there, and the donkeys are all going to play a big part in it. And if I am to be frank, I am more excited for the donkey movie than Shrek 5. I think it's going to be really, really good. You can never go wrong with Eddie Murphy. He is, hands down, probably my favorite comic actor of all time. I think he is just so amazing. If I had to pick any star from Shrek to meet in real life, it would be Eddie Murphy. I love his non-Shrek stuff, films like The Nutty Professor, Bowfinger, one of my favorite comedies of all time. The fact that he is Donkey just makes those movies so much better, and I think he is going to kill it with this movie. And I think the donkeys, when we see their designs, they're going to look really cool. They're going to look like, you're hearing it now, the donkeys are going to look like DeviantArt Pony OCs. They're going to be absolutely hilarious, but there's a lot you could do there, so I am very excited for the donkey movie. And the other thing is that Shrek 5 is like a checkbox, right? It's got all these things it's got to do. It's got to be the return of the franchise. It's got to reintroduce it all, but it's also got to have the Smash Mouth music, the outhouse, all these things that audiences come and know to expect, especially the normie audience that hasn't seen Shrek in 15 years. Some people, by the way, haven't even seen a Shrek movie since Shrek the Third. Think about that. They're going 20 years without seeing a Shrek movie. So they have to see all the things they know. But with Donkey, clean slate right there. Like Puss in Boots' Last Wish, they can take a risk. They can do something really cool. And I think that movie's going to be really cool. We're also going to get a third Puss in Boots movie. This is something that a lot of people in Hollywood have been talking about. From what I gather, it is in active development, so that's good. We're getting a whole Shrek cinematic universe. So it seems like the golden age of Shrek is yet to come. We just got to sit and wait on the hype train. And boy, is the waiting game long. But there's a lot of Shrek to collect, so if you want to know everything about Shrek toys, subscribe, watch my videos. I talk all things collecting Shrek. And we'll have a lot to collect as Shrek 5 inches closer. We've seen some products, we've seen some toys, so that's exciting. That is really exciting. I'm the type of person that is more excited about the products than the movie, because I'm a toy guy. I love the toys. Even if Shrek 5 was like literally the worst movie ever made, but gave us nice Shrek action figures, the movie's a huge success in my book. Because all I want is really good toys. But Shrek 5 is coming. We just gotta wait and wait and wait. Let me know in the comments how the hype for Shrek 5 is going. Are you still hyped? Are you mad about the designs? Oh my, we have a little bit of a fairy tale freak out here. I hit the wall and I knocked down one of the 3 blind mice. Which one is this? I think this one's Gordo. Gordo, what are you doing here? Okay, that's enough rambling for me. I would love to hear some dissenting opinions. If you don't like the trailer, please let me know why, I want to hear what you guys have to say. So, thanks for watching. And as always, have a happily ever after. Special thanks to everyone who makes this channel possible, including my super swampy supporters, Griffin Newman, Nick BTV, Antonio Bocina, J. Florence Jones, Bor Usta, Pizza Topping, Jay Bipper, Shotgun Justice, Brainworm in Your Skull, Don Tizzle, M. Pladley, Art Yam, The Luke Rosati, SMO3, Sailor Laws, Jamie, Telephone Wire, Tucker Time, Bonzalio, Aaron, and Jid Jip. If you'd like to see your name up here, consider supporting the channel with a 99-cent a month donation by purchasing a YouTube membership. But a huge special thanks to you for watching the video all the way until the end.